We want to bring you some new voices around here with some expertise, and Ben Solak does a great job, as a lot of people do at The Ringer, for the Ringer's NFL show as part of football coverage. And we like this kind of expertise when he writes to prove to you how much he knows about the sport. Quote, "We've been trying to figure out Cincinnati all season. Now the Bengals will play for a championship. How is what he asks." I love that he has no idea. And none of us do, but he probably does has some theories, and he could probably help us shape today's news as well. So we'll talk about the Bengals in a second, Ben, but thank you for joining us. And can you please help us understand what it is that we are witnessing right now in real time? I have not seen a football retirement being celebrated like this, and it's because it's really hard, even with all the words in the world, to explain how great this person has been dominating a sport that we've seen the last 3 weeks can be hella random.
Yeah, there's too many things. He played for 22 years. Just too much stuff happened in the world that occurred over the course of 2 decades for you to properly contextualize like what Brady is, what he means, how he impacted the game. You can break his career into thirds and have 3 Hall of Fame careers. That level of consistent dominance is just impossible to calibrate to. So everybody will remember Brady for whatever they want to remember him as, for however much they loved him or they hated him. I was an Eagles fan growing up during prime Brady era. I watched us lose a Super Bowl to him and then beat him in a Super Bowl. I always remember him for dropping a pass. You know what I mean? Like it's whatever you choose to remember Brady for, you can. So there's just so much stuff that it's up to everybody what they want to remember him as.
Do you have a childhood memory that is before Brady? Because you ain't old. And so, like, your entire sports lifetime, I'm asking you if you have any kind of human memory before Tom Brady started winning football games.
Right. Have you ever heard of Norm Van Brocklin would be another way to put it?
Or Blanda.
Yeah, well, because I'm an Eagles fan, I do know Norm. Of the 1960s great Eagles championship, which was their only championship before the Super Bowl win. But no, my entire football career is defined by Brady, right? My entire football memory is defined by Brady. I was raised by a Jets fan and a Steelers fan. All I did was hate Tom Brady. My earliest memory is Brady in that 03, 04 season. I mean, I was born in 97. And so, yeah, all I have is Brady in New England dominating the football landscape. And thinking about football after him is confusing and disorientating.
Can you explain to us how he did what he did the last 7 years when there's legitimately no precedent for a quarterback aging that way?
I think science will be able to explain it to us soon. I think that, I would love to tell you that you eat avocados and your arm gets stronger at the age of 44, but I don't think that's the whole story. And I think probably there are things that Brady was doing in terms of working out in the offseason, in terms of handling his body, that are going to become far more popular as this gets looked into, especially now that he's retired and kind of the competitive edge won't matter. But there's no explanation that we have right now for Brady not only dominating the way he did, but becoming stronger. Like, this was like comic book villain nonsense. He was zinging the ball at 43 the way he did not at 25. And that, to me, is a scientific marvel and a mystery that will be answered by Nobel Prize winners in 2035, and that no earlier. I think Brady is a cyborg, and we will eventually get to autopsy him and see what's inside.
Even if it is steroids and HGH, let's just say, make it the worst possible thing. I've never seen something, therefore it must be cheating. Even if it is that, it would still be wildly impressive.
It'd be awesome. It was one of the coolest things you've ever seen. It was amazing.
Ben, the sweatshirt I'm wearing is older than you are, by the way. But I want to ask you this because it seems so bizarre to ask it, considering Brady's 44 years old. But how surprised were you that he's retiring now?
Very surprised. He led the league in passing attempts, passing yards, and passing touchdowns, and then set a single season record for passing completions this past year. I would have told you that Brady was going to step on the throat of the league for as long as he could just to prove he could. And when Schefter first reported he was retiring and Brady, the camp of Brady kind of came out with maybe he's not, I was extremely worried that Brady was just going to come back for a year out of spite just to prove that nobody gets to decide when Tom retires. Tom decides and that's it. And to see him go out, it was funny. I was talking with Kevin on this on the Ringer NFL show. To see him go out on a divisional round loss somehow feels like he's not going out on top, which speaks to the level of consistency he's had in his career. That he was part of the third to last week of the NFL season. And we're like, wow, it's kind of a disappointing end. I thought he would go further his last season, right? So I would have guessed with a playoff loss in that way, and with the volume he was carrying, the career he was carrying, he would have come back. And I think that, the way he's contextualizing this, other pursuits, other things he wants to go into, he talks about his family a lot, speaks to the fact that, like, Brady just wants to do other things. And if ennui is what got Tom Brady out of the NFL, I and 31 other teams are very, very pleased with that.
What could you criticize him for?
Like being stuffy and annoying in New England, but then he went to Tampa and became cool. The Tampa era for Brady is so important to me in terms of remembering his career, because when he was in New England, he was just so shuttered off, and it was so, we are the New England machine. We are this kind of Terminator, never to be stopped force. Then when he went to Tampa, got a little bit sauced after the Super Bowl win, started chucking the Lombardi trophy across boats. It gave you that sense, that reminder that, yeah, this guy is not only an incredible quarterback, an incredible competitor, but he's been such an incredible leader for 2 decades in his career because he can hang. Like, is cool. Like, he does fun things. Like, he's done a great job leading a lot of different personalities, a lot of different styles of play over the course of his career in New England. And we could always chalk that up to, like, the Patriots just being so good at business, do your job, whatever. But then in Tampa Bay, we got to see that Brady had that spirit to him as well. He seemed like a guy you want to play with. And so the biggest criticism you had was that, like, in New England, he just seemed kind of lame. Like, he just didn't seem very fun. But then in Tampa Bay, we got this, like, little midlife crisis, Tom, and it was a good time.
Well, given that, I want to ask everybody in the group this question. You have to choose between what I'm asking you here. When did Tom Brady prove more? The last 2 years or the 20 before it?
Last 2 for me.
It's got to be the 20 before it, just because that level of consistency, championship consistency, is still unmatched, even if you get rid of the Tampa years. But that Tampa period was a very, very, very valuable kicker. It was a very emphatic answer to that Brady versus Belichick question we all asked in 2020. So it's up there. It's really valuable. But for me, like, 2 decades in which he owns the league is kind of difficult to argue against.
The reason that I say that, though, is because football can be such a mystery, and his career has been such a mystery, that if not for the last 2 years, I would have always thought, even as someone watching this over 20 years, well, Belichick had something to do with that. Belichick is responsible in ways that I can't understand because I don't understand football the way Belichick does. And the last 2 years have done a hell of a job of simply erasing that for me.
It was Brady and Belichick for 20 years. The last 2, it was just Brady. I mean,
yeah.
And that's a big difference.
Yeah, that kicker, right? The more you talk about it, the more I feel like, yeah, that kicker is just, it is critical. It is legacy defining, legacy cementing. It does feel that way.
He almost ended on an interception. Like, if the Patriots had their way, I think maybe Brady retires on a pick 6. Brady,
right.
At home in a playoff game.
And Belichick gets to keep the credit forever. And then since then, oh, wait a minute. No, Mac Jones ain't going to be that. Like, don't try and talk me into that just because he's done it one time. Like, don't try and talk me into, please, Belichick can figure out a way to do that with another 6th-round pick.
But GOAT stopped being a debate after 28-3. Like, there wasn't, like, Manning or Brady. That shit stopped after he came back against the NFL MVP.
But no, but I would also say, though, that people would say, well, is that Belichick? Like, I still think the fact that he did what he did the last 2 years, where he's retiring on top. Explain to me how good he was this season. Let's just do it that way.
Sure.
This season, explain to the people how good he was.
So Brady was hitting windows in terms of, like, throwing middle of the field, throwing against contested coverage this year that he was not doing ever in New England. In Parks, he didn't have to, right? They would just put, like, every Wes Welker clone they had out there, and they would always be able to find and manufacture this space. But the fact that we're dealing with, like, geriatric Rob Gronkowski 20 yards down the field, running with linebackers who are, like, built to run with these guys now. Linebackers are light and they're fast and they're built to cover these routes. And Brady would just hammer that throw in there, right? The fact that Brady is also, like, still managing the pocket, still bouncing around, taking hits. He's 44, taking hits from, like, 25-year-olds who all they've wanted to do for their entire life is hit Tom Brady. And he bounces back up, right? Bloody lip, goes back out there and drives for 24 points against the Rams. Like, the level of physical dominance that we saw from Brady is another thing that was a little bit inaccessible in his time in New England. The book on Brady was obviously he was very physically gifted, but that mentally, post-snap, he was just able to take over the game. Then he went to Tampa Bay, and all of a sudden it was, all right, can you hit Mike Evans, a contested window outside the numbers, 15 yards down the field? And Brady's never had the strongest arm, just zinging that thing in there. So there's a level of physical dominance that was also proven in his 40s in a different place.
Ben, I can construct an argument, no joke. I can construct an argument based on the last 2 years that Belichick held Brady back by not getting him weapons like Randy Moss more often.
Right.
Because the year that Brady had his best year when he had Randy Moss, Brady had his best year when he had someone like Mike Evans in Philadelphia.
This last year was really close to that Moss year.
Excuse me, not in Philadelphia. When he has Mike Evans in Tampa, you see Brady can throw still downfield. The deep ball that I was criticizing, saying it had lost some of its accuracy 7 years ago, is because Belichick didn't get him anybody he could throw it to down there.
It's absolutely true, and that's another, like, we're running out of superlatives here for Brady. Everything is amazing, but one of the things that'll stick with me as like a film guy, football guy, whatever, is that quarterbacks, players, but especially quarterbacks, don't change their stripes. They are who they are. They have strengths and weaknesses. They have offenses that work for them. Sometimes they're better in that offense, sometimes they're worse, but like, this is what they have to do. The Patriots, and now this Tampa era, they span like every style of passing offense that we've seen in the last 20 years. And Brady won a Super Bowl in all of them. He was a complete chameleon. You could do anything in the world with him in terms of concepts and drops and what protection do you want? What style receivers do you want? There's nobody else we get to talk about like that had the mental ability and the physical ability to just run anything. And that to me is will always like stand out with Brady, even as like Mahomes dominates or Lamar dominates or Allen dominates. They all do it in their skill sets, in their style of offenses. Brady was a chameleon. He can be whatever you like.
As the news rolls in, as the reporting rolls in, as we treat this retirement unlike any that we have seen in this sport, what are some of the numbers and some of the reporting that you have seen where you've been like, okay, that helps me understand Tom Brady a little bit better, or that insight is an interesting insight on Tom Brady that I have not heard?
I like he's won 17% of the Super Bowls. I think it's 17%, right? It's just like, hey, all of them, Brady has just, one out of every 6 or whatever it is. I love the fact that he also has more Super Bowls than the Patriots. That's my favorite part of the Bucks era, and getting that one extra one is that he now has more than the Steelers, but then also more than New England. Also you'll see his playoff passing numbers get put up against like career numbers for other quarterbacks, because he just has so much volume in the playoffs in terms of games that he's played, that you can look at just playoff performance as like a career of several seasons worth of attempts. And that, like, again, it expresses the degree to which there was consistent championship level performance. Like it emphasizes it's not what Brady did, it's what he never did, which was he never fell off. He never took a step back. He was always that guy year in and year out.
I am enjoying being knee-jerk prisoner of the moment and really accenting what these last 2 years were for this legacy and this retirement that we are celebrating today, that could have been 2 weeks after a grade loss in Foxborough to Ryan Tannehill, career ending on a pick 6, because this is a different thing because he's retiring on top, and it's unusual. Once upon a time, before the Miami Heat got LeBron James and Chris Bosh, Stugotz was saying on the radio loudly this.
Has Pat Riley failed Dwayne Wade? Seriously. Has Riley and the organization, because Dan, all these other teams, all the other contenders went out and made moves, and the Heat haven't done a single thing. What have they done for Dwayne Wade? They got him Jermaine O'Neal, a broken Jermaine O'Neal. He's going to leave here, and he should leave here.
They got him Shaq.
Yeah.
And a championship.
Since then. Let's sell him on this notion of all these guys we're going to get next year. None of these guys want to come here. None of them. He's failed, Dwayne Wade. Failed the fans. Failed the city.
Did Belichick fail Tom Brady at the end? Failed the fans, failed the city, because he did not build him the team that he just got in Tampa that had been 7-9. He kept doing it, wanting to do it with Amendolas and Troy Browns and Wes Welkers, and didn't get him a goddamn deep threat.
It's funny, I'm Philadelphia Pill, because the whole time I was like, yes, they have failed Joel Embiid. That's where I was fully ready to go on the Ben Simmons thing. But I don't think so. Just because 6 championships is 6 championships. Like I said, that level of consistency is incredible. I don't think us on the outside knew for certain that when Brady went to Tampa, we were going to get this. And I think that then on the inside, with Belichick knowing what they were doing well and knowing how consistently they were doing it, I'm not surprised there wasn't an urgency to change the model. I'm not surprised there wasn't an urgency to say, like, we have to really open this thing up. It was, we're not losing. We're beating everybody. We're not gonna fix what ain't broke, sort of an approach. And again, like 6 rings over 20 years, that's really not broke. So I'm not surprised there was no move to change it.
I appreciate that you answered that question seriously. I do appreciate it.
What's the weirdest part of Tom Brady's career? Because for me, it's like the 9 years in between Super Bowl victories in what would be, for normal career timelines, the prime of his career.
Is it 9 years?
That he went
Holy
without
smokes.
wins. Like, yeah, because you had
Yeah.
Roethlisberger. I think Rodgers was in there. Wes Welker found a way to play with Peyton Manning and Tom Brady for multiple years.
Never
and
win anything.
Never win a title.
Yep. And now he's the wide receiver coach of the San Francisco 49ers. And guess what he hasn't done there? Rough.
I like that he's fact checking because it's startling that he
He
went,
went 9 years.
It doesn't feel like
Shocking.
that.
No,
Yeah.
it doesn't.
He went
Doesn't feel
9
like
years
it.
without winning. Because remember,
The
there were 2
silence
Eli
is-
Manning victories in there over
Yep.
Tom Brady, but he went like
Right.
9 years. Yeah. Joe Flacco was in there 9 years in between Super Bowl victories in what would be considered
Well,
by most the prime of an
but
NFL
this is
quarterback's career.
what is great about the Tom Brady story is he says he's got 3 different Hall of Fame careers. Is that during one of them, a 9-year split, Stugotz would have been that entire time calling him a choker because he couldn't win the big one.
Right.
But he won so many big ones before
I
that.
know, but I'm saying if you had just gotten there and arrived at the 9 years,
All over him.
if those
Yes.
years had been the first years, you would have dragged him down with your teeth in his neck.
Right. Overrated.
Overrated choker. Win a big one. The other games, what did you find interesting about what happened with the Chiefs at the end?
I think we want to read a lot into it. We would love for there to be a model to beat the Chiefs. That'd be so nice, wouldn't it? I'm not sure that there is. It's a well-coached defense in Cincinnati. It's kind of like a no stars. Everybody's above average. We can all kind of do everything defense, and that's good. But the reality is they watched that first half and they said, all right, well, we can't do anything. So we're going to drop as many guys into coverage, and we are going to hope that this guy, this king of football, this Titan, just makes enough mistakes that we can hang. And I think that kind of has to be your approach against Mahomes. He was the least blitzed quarterback this year by a country mile. Every team at this point is just kind of rushing 4, rushing 3, dropping 7, dropping 8, and saying, we're going to take the fun out of this for you, man. Like, you're not going to get to do your scramble drill nonsense. You're not going to get to go your deep throws. You're going to have to nickel and dime us, and we're just going to make you sad. And then hopefully by the third quarter and the fourth quarter, you're bored enough that you start doing dumb things. That's where Cincinnati got him. And that's awesome. I'm not sure it's replicable, especially because teams were doing that sort of an approach in the back half of the season. And Mahomes was showing maturity and he was showing growth there. So I think you've seen that kind of arc, that development from Mahomes over the course of this year. Didn't get it done against Cincinnati. I think coming off of the high of that Bills game probably made him feel like, all right, it's time to go. Fourth quarter, like I just did this last week and he was pushing and that wasn't great. I think over time, this sort of an approach can put a ceiling on the offense, but it's not going to stop it. You're still going to be dealing with high 20s, low 30-point totals. And that's just the reality of Mahomes and this Chiefs team.
You mentioned that Cincinnati is a well-coached defense. You were careful to not say that they're a good defense. I would venture
That
to
is
say
correct.
that Cincinnati has found itself in a Super Bowl with not a good defense, and also sneaky, not a good offense either. If you look at DVOA, and it's not like they turned it on in the postseason either. Their offensive numbers in the postseason weren't great. They weren't overly impressive. This is one of the more improbable Super Bowl runs I've ever seen.
Ben, how much of that are you going to assign to 20 of their games? 16 of them have been by 3 points, and we're playing random ball for three weeks now, and all season, but for 3 weeks.
Chaos reigns, which it's always a nice reminder that chaos reigns, right? Because you're here as a football writer and you're like, I can explain things. And then the Bengals enter the Super Bowl and you remember that you're nothing and you have no idea what's going on and coin flips decide everything. But that's where we are with Cincinnati. And it gives us a perspective on the little edges that matter for Super Bowl contenders, right? The Rams trade a second and a third round pick for Von Miller. And it's like, is this a good usage of resources? Honestly, we really don't know. It's an extremely difficult calculus. I can prove that because the Bengals are in the Super Bowl. It takes a lot of luck. It takes a lot of positive regression to get to this place. You might as well just load up on stars and hope that they make those plays for you. Cincinnati being here is great news for them long term. You get playoff experience from Burrow. Hopefully you get buy-in from Mike Brown, the owner/general manager. He might employ 3 scouts next year. Whoa. Hopefully this helps them out long term. Short term, they don't read like a team that belongs here. But hey, you've got enough positive coin flips to get to the spot. Get a few more. Win a championship, baby.
31 years without a playoff victory, a notoriously cheap ownership group that you can reasonably question was the only one in the NFL not really trying to win during the Marvin Lewis years. You couldn't do that with any other football team. And this part is the funniest part to me. And it's just wonderful because we're going to spend 2 weeks saying the Bengals are back and Burrow and Jamar Chase are going to change the way football's played. But what he just said is so close from being Derek Carr throws into the end zone, they go for 2, and an interim coach with the Raiders is riding into the Super Bowl because somehow they overcame.
The Titans had the ball with 2 minutes left in a tie game. Bengals win? That's just not that usually doesn't happen 3 games in a row, but that's where we were.
They've won, but they I saw some standings that were reversed just to account for if every team won a 3-point game that they had lost, or every 1-score game, and you'd get an entirely different league. The Bengals are there, and it doesn't really have a good explanation beyond football. Just football happened.
Yep, and that's why we whenever you go and you build out projections for next season, you take all the 1-score games, you make them 50-50, and you look at the blowouts and the dominant wins. And that's where teams actually project onto sticking next year. Jamar Chase right now is he leads the league in receiving yards over expectation, which is a ESPN stat. A lot of this is very, very, very House of Cardsy. But if you're Cincinnati, you don't care. You don't care right now. 2 weeks in the national spotlight in the Super Bowl. Love it. Enjoy it.
I'm just not sure, though, that the greatest tribute to Tom Brady is that he won above all that, right? Above Aaron Rodgers wins once. Above Eli won twice and Peyton won twice. That doesn't make a lot of sense. They're not the same quarterback.
Nick Foles has one.
But above all that, he stands atop, and then Nick Foles beats him.
No birds, baby.
Dominates him. Dominates him. Nick Foles takes the Super Bowl MVP from him. It's ridiculous. Thank you, Ben.
Of course. Appreciate it, y'all.